Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm doing a quick live update here as Rahu and Ketu are about to change signs in March 17th. That's in a month. I'm recording this on March 10th. And I'm doing this as an update on the Ukraine war and as a revisiting of history. Because we're going to go back and look at what happened the last time Rahu went through Aries and Ketu went through Libra around the same issue. We're going to be looking at an issue called the Orange Revolution that happened at that time, and you may have remembered that or not. I do remember it. I haven't just started watching Ukraine and Russia recently, and also not even just in 2014. I remember back in like 1989 when Ukraine became independent and all like that. So we're going to be talking about these things mainly as an astrological case study. Of course, you can see going beneath the video here that you can get a free class on the lunar nodes at that talks about this shift at nodalshift22.com. That takes you to a page like this where you can where is it? Oh, sorry. Page like this where you can register for that free class. This screenshot here, this is actually the PDF of the class of that free class on the lunar nodes. This is the manual. Lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu this way, Aries and Libra. Then I go through the last time this happened, and then I also even make you an offer where you can get this great mini course. It's actually only $4.97, but I go through Rahu in Aries, Ketu, and Libra for all 12 signs as well. So this is actually the manual from that class. And as you can see, one of the sections on the manual is from 2004, and you can see the Orange Revolution followed a disputed presidential election in Ukraine where Viktor Yanukovych against Viktor Yushchenko, accusation of electoral fraud. And what happened is Yanukovych wound up getting poisoned, and you may have remembered getting disfigured and whatnot, or not Yanukovych, but the other one. Sorry, I get these names mixed up. Yushchenko, yeah, that's right, Yushchenko. I'm looking up his name right now. Yushchenko got poisoned and disfigured in the process. This was well known at the time, and in fact, you can see right here. This was him at the time. This was from the Orange Revolution, and this happened the last time Rahu went through Aries and Ketu went through Libra 18 years ago. Do the math. 2014, 2022. This was in many ways the first real democratic election in Ukraine, and look at what happened. And who do you think did this? How do you think this happened? It's a long time coming, these kinds of things. So again, this is why we do case studies like this. And so again, I'm going to be talking about where we're at right now with this transit. And again, you should know that if you want to find out what these things are going to mean to you in this next year and a half, starting March 2017, again, you can, March 2022, you can go and get the free class. This is where, all you do is you go and you click that link and then you register and watch this free class. And again, this is really poignant. And there's a few other things from this class that I taught where it's not just with the Orange Revolution and the election in Ukraine that happened 18 years ago, the last time Rahu was in Aries and Ketu was in Libra, but there was also at that time major shifts in the European Union, for example. European Union and NATO, this was a time of great expansion of the EU and of NATO. They both happened at that time, and of course, that's one of the biggest issues that we're all talking about now. Well, why NATO? Well, why all this expansion is a sort of justification or what have you. But you just see a revisiting of all of these themes now with Rahu going through Aries, Ketu going through Libra. For example, you can see that, there's a lot of things that happened, by the way. This was also when Saddam Hussein was captured in the Iran-Iraq war. You can see the EU expanded May 1st, 2004 by 10 new member states: Cyprus, Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. All of them got EU membership at that time, the European Union. Of course, the Ukraine, Ukraine also has wanted to be an EU member as well, which has been one of the big issues that Putin has had, is having a member of the EU right on his border, a democratic state right on his border. Isn't too good because he's a dictator. By the way, these are just basic statements. If people want to object to the things I say, you can object respectfully, place respectful comments, and have a dialogue. If you troll me, especially with an anonymous sock puppet account, and say that I'm brainwashed and I'm an idiot and all this stuff, I'm going to delete the comment. Okay, that's just the way it is. But again, I'm not an idiot and I'm not brainwashed. I've been watching this stuff a long time, probably longer than many of you watching this, because I remember when the Soviet Union fell. I was in my mid to late 20s, and Ukrainian, Belarus, Georgia, all of them that were part of the Soviet Union then became independent states, and Mother Russia pulled back because it wasn't able to, maintain that empire. And Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, these other states became independent countries. So what happened 30 years before that, or 50 years before that, to lay claim to that land now is just, in the minds of most people, not a legitimate reason, certainly to invade the country. So again, we have to put things in a modern historical context, and that's what we're doing. Notice this: the last time that the nodes went through Aries and Libra is when this expansion happened of both both the EU and also of NATO, because we can also see here, where is it? There was also a great expansion of NATO at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back. I'm pretty sure this time Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, it was also the time Mark Zuckerberg established Facebook. Oh yeah, this was also the largest expansion of NATO. Look, both of these things happened. March 29th, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia were all admitted to NATO, the largest expansion of NATO at that time. And then shortly thereafter, the European Union expanded. So both NATO expanded gigantically at that time, and the EU expanded at that time in February 2004 and March 29th. So February 4th is when Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. Then March 29th, 2004, NATO expands, largest expansion ever, really. Again, Bulgaria, all of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia were all expanded at that time. And then in May, the EU expanded to include all of these member states. So again, whether you think I'm judging this right or wrong, I'm not saying that it means I am saying, frankly, that it doesn't justify an invasion. But you can hear the rhetoric right now. And again, understand something. This is an astrological case study, and I'm using the astrology case study to illustrate themes of the day. Notice how these themes are coming back. Rahu and Aries. Aries is about war. It's literally what it's about. It's about asserting our individuality. Rahu goes into Aries 18 years ago. The last time it went into Aries, we had the largest expansion of NATO ever, largest expansion of the EU. And then a few months later, we had an election in the Ukraine where we now have a major war. And that election was corrupt. And the Yanukovych wound up winning against the Russian stooge who was Yushchenko, who was a Russian pup. I'm sorry, I have them backwards. I keep saying it backwards. I'm sorry. Yushchenko wound up winning against Yanukovych. But then the but he wound up being poisoned, and then they had the revolution, and he was reinstated. Sorry about the. So I'll just read it again. Following the disputed presidential election in Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych won against Viktor Yushchenko and accusations of electoral fraud. A revote resulted in Yushchenko being declared the winner. Yes. Sorry about getting the names mixed up. Honestly, to us in the West, it's very easy to get these names confused. I'm sorry. Yushchenko and Yanukovych, right? So again, if you don't remember this, I do very well. And again, this is again a revisiting of history. November 22nd, 2004, Rahu was in Aries. In fact, later we even had, when we go forward again, we also have that where is it? Oops. There was the tsunami that also happened at that time. The tsunami in Sumatra, in Indonesia, also happened at that time. So it was a very ripe time of amazing, there was a lot of seismic shifts, which is very much the nature of Rahu and Aries. Suddenly, all kinds of shocking events happened. Facebook started. Again, you might think, well, what's the big deal? Well, look at how that's really changed our world, right? They found Saddam Hussein. They captured him. Again, at the time, maybe you weren't paying attention to things like the Orange Revolution in Ukraine. You weren't looking at that. I noticed it. But look at what's happened 18 years later. This expansion of NATO, this expansion of the NATO. Someone says the Chernobyl explosion hit this axis as well. Okay. Wow. Okay. I didn't even go back that far, but I'm not surprised. That would have been, Chernobyl would have been, I think it's 86 or something. And so this is why we go back and look at transits. And so what this really shows now is this, here's the chart that I started with, is that, as you see, this is March 17th. That's when Rahu is officially going to cross over using the Lahiri Anumsha. 1 second. And so I said this in my 2022 forecast, that this transit of Rahu through Aries, very dangerous. And we're seeing it, of course, already. Later in the year, in the summer, Mars is going to join Rahu up here, and that's when I think it's really even more explosive than it is now. We're seeing these really terrible, this terrible war action that has begun, and it's lining up to be just a dreadful scenario that is all of the possibilities of World War III kind of thing that everybody has feared, obviously could be lining up for these kinds of terrible outcomes. Putin has been threatening nuclear weapons, and who could put it past him at this point? And China is now backing Russia. Again, forget what you think about these things. And again, I'm if I haven't made it clear, I'm against savage warfare, okay? By the way, something else people should understand and should be careful about doing, creating false equivalents. Well, the US and NATO, they do things too. The EU, they're not innocent. What about, NATO expansion? All of that could be a legitimate beef. There's no question about it. But let's not forget, and let's not make false equivalents. Putin is a dictator, okay? He's been in office for more than 20 years. Imagine if George W. Bush, remember him? Remember that president of the United States that was elected in 2000? Well, you know what? Putin was already president of Russia at that time, president. What if George W. Bush was still president of the United States and has had 20 years to concentrate his power? That would be called a dictator. You cannot keep equating Putin with like, we've had like 5 presidents since Putin came to president when Bill Clinton was president of the US. Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. 5 presidents since Putin has been dictator. Okay? That's a whole different ball game. What if there would have been Russian elections where Russian people are represented, where there's a representative government, where there's a democracy, where all of that is going that way? Maybe then Ukraine wouldn't want to be part of NATO, to be part of the EU, because they're next to a dictator who has annexed Crimea in 2014, but before that, he annexed Georgia. He went into Belarus. He's always there trying. Everybody knows he has intentions. He's meddling in their 2008 election. Maybe this is why Ukraine wants assistance from the West. Okay, maybe this is why. So again, you can't create false equivalence between a dictator, autonomous dictator, which is what Putin is. No, the Russian people don't want this. Probably the generals don't want it. No one wants it. Putin wants it, and he's a dictator. So he does it. So try to think about that a little bit too. And again, if you disagree with me, you can disagree respectfully, disagree in comments, and we'll have a conversation. If you show up and say I'm brainwashed, and I'm an idiot, and this and that, I'm going to just delete the comment. I'm over it. Really, I'm just over it. But seeing these situations the way they are, this makes it so dangerous. By the way, also even aligning with China. These are authoritarian regimes. These aren't democracies. And again, America and the West, we have our issues too with democracies turning into autocracies and turning into oligarchies, especially corporate oligarchical structures. No question about it. But be careful with false equivalence. Be careful saying, well, Putin is just, what about this? Yeah, what about it? So read the stuff and listen to it, and really do your homework and understand, again, where is the U.S. president that did something like this because he lost an election, because he wanted to have his puppet there. And so this person was disfigured. Look at Alexei Navalny right now in a prison. So we have to look at these things and be objective about them first. So anyway, it's very dangerous. And again, Rahu is about, I should say the sign of Aries is very much about dictatorships. And Rahu is about a kind of obsessive power structure, obsessive, I want the power. This is why Rahu in Aries is dangerous. Rahu-Mars conjunctions are dangerous because Mars wants the power and wants to fight, and Rahu is kind of obsessed with that. And again, this is literally the manual from the free class on Rahu in Aries and Ketu in Libra. And again, when you do that, part of that web class is also where I talk about your chart. So I talk about this for each of the 12 signs. So you need to know about this as well, because your like inner dictator is also ready to come out. Notice this. Your, desire to be the strong, powerful one who might even invade other kingdoms and might even just assert your own individuality, again, sort of like a dictator against others, is also threatening to come out. But it's going to be different. Like, for example, if you're if you're an Aquarius person, that's going to be your 3rd house. That's very different than if you have a Virgo ascendant, then this Rahu going through Aries is going to be in your 8th house, and Ketu going through Libra is going to be your 2nd house. So this is very important. By the way, and as I've said, the class is free. You don't have to do anything. This, offer is there if you want to get hours of class, but this is a free web class, and I have people go through it that way so I can sit down and spend, take a long time to do it, because these longer videos don't track so well on YouTube. But I get to really do a proper case study. And this Rahu in Aries, I really talk a lot about how, just like before, we saw what happened in that last time Rahu was in Aries, and we had this thing happen, this election, this disfigurement. Again, Aries is the head, Taurus is the face, but we see this kind of the will of the people subverted for example, when they wanted to elect the leader they wanted, instead this happened, but then they revolted. The Orange Revolution. Again, that was literally called the Orange Revolution, what happened in Ukraine at that time. What do you think revolution is? Well, it's Mars, it's Aries, right? Both of them have those qualities. It's Rahu, also revolution. So we're seeing this now, and look at the resolve of the Ukrainian people. Look at the spirit of revolution and saying, no, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight again, but then you got to fight. So again, you could also see this as the revolution against, let's say, from the position of the rest of the world. Let's say, because there's an alliance, and a lot of people who say, they always say that I'm not objective because, well, what about how NATO and the West has dominated other countries in the world? That's a fair point. It's an absolutely fair point. So it's their revolution, let's say, especially using U.S. petrodollars and whatnot. This is a lot of what is also going on behind the scenes, particularly with Russia and China, using a currency that, rather than petrodollars, to buy oil or to trade, whereas the dollar has been the standard. Setting up alliances where the U.S. and Western countries don't just use the dollar as the default currency, et cetera, et cetera. I'm aware of all of it. I know. So it's revolution against those things, revolution against the banking system, revolution against all authority, oligarchical structures. So again, it's not just Ukraine. We have oppressive governmental structures all over the world. And by the way, here in the U.S. as well. And I say as well, gigantic problems here with the people needing to rebel against the oppressive structures in our country, where we don't have basic needs. We don't have, again, things like healthcare or other personal freedoms. This is a revolutionary transit, and it's going to blow up a lot of things. So we can literally see the things blowing up in Ukraine right now, and we can see a direct connection to the last time Rahu went through Aries and all of these issues being talked about. NATO expansion, EU expansion. By the way, this is at the heart of what, whether you know it or not, and I do, a big part of what happened in 2014 was that the Russian-backed puppet leader did not want to be part of the EU, whereas the other leader wanted to be part of the EU and engage in free trade. They want to be part of Europe, not part of Russia. It's very clear. The Ukraine has been very clear. I keep saying the Ukraine. I should say Ukraine, because when you say the Ukraine, you're marking them as part of the previous Russian Empire or the previous Soviet Union. But Ukraine has shown time and time again with their votes, not just Ukraine, by the way, Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltics, they all want to be independent. They don't want to be orbits of Russia, particularly because Russia is ruled by a dictator. They don't want to live under a dictatorship. Frankly, no one does, not even the Russian people. So again, the Ukraine, I said it again, Ukraine has a right to be part of the EU, which is a trading bloc, which brings more power. They have a right to be part of a NATO organization that is a hedge against Russian imperialism. If Russia wasn't imperialist, they wouldn't care so much. Again, this is why you don't see Mexico forming an alliance, because they're afraid that America is going to roll over the border, or Canada forming an alliance because they're afraid America is going to invade them. No. But you see the Ukraine afraid because, I did it again, you see Ukraine afraid because Russia has continuously tried to take them over. And they've already done it to Georgia and Belarus, or at least trying to install puppets. So there's a historical reason. You can't just say, well, NATO has done this. Yeah, for reason. There's a dictator who wants the country. Hello. So again, it's complicated, but it's, again, it's not that complicated, and you can't just equivocate. You can't just, and so when you see it in this context, especially, you see the revolutions that have already happened in Ukraine to remain independent. They want to be an independent country, just like every country. They want to be self-deterministic, right? And by the way, of course, I also know of all the fighting in the eastern Ukraine and the neo-Nazi infiltration, and how part of that is also very sympathetic and pro-Russian. And most people thought that Putin was going to take a chunk of eastern Ukraine and then try to establish a land bridge through Mariupol to connect the Black Sea and whatnot. But again, this has been utter madness what's happened now. No one thought that would happen. So, but this kind of hyper intense is this nature of Rahu going into Aries, and this blown up explosion of literal war that we see externally. But again, think about this all around the world. In America, in India, there's hotbeds all over the world of conflict. And again, we're looking at this now, but again, one of the reasons China is sympathetic is because they love to move on Taiwan, and they're looking to see, well, what's the U.S. doing here? They're not doing anything. Well, we can saber rattle too and say, if you try to meddle in us taking Taiwan, we'll shoot a nuke at you. And it seems to make the U.S. not do anything, which, by the way, I'm glad. I don't want nuclear war. So there's nothing good about this. It's a very complicated situation, at least complicated geopolitically. And there's no, but one thing that's not complicated, what Putin is doing, and I say Putin, not Russia, what Putin is doing, he's a dictator, he's doing it, is absolutely abhorrent. Completely destroying a beautiful country just for geopolitical gain. And so besides that, it could get a lot worse for sure. And it could escalate into the nightmare scenario that we all have. Again, one of the things that's going on is this, in many ways, is the kind of last gasp of that previous generation, the boomers, the 70-year-olds that are running the world still, the Putins, the Trump, the Xi, these people. The younger generation is coming up, and someone even put that in the comments. I was about to say, the spirit of revolution is now, coming, and those who are hanging on to these old values, including whether it's capitalism and authoritarianism, which are getting mixed together through this oligarchical, capitalistic, hegemonic culture, where everyththing is about money, which is really how all of this shakes out. It's all about money. Oil companies are now going to gouge people rather than they don't even pay any taxes. They don't have to raise oil prices. Our President Biden could create an executive order that prevents oil companies from raising prices during this conflict. He could do it, actually, with a presidential order. Of course, he won't. There's so much that this is all just part of that same whole game, which has been going on for decades. So again, don't say I'm an idiot, naive, stupid, and brainwashed, because I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about every single thing I know. I know this stuff. I've known it forever. This is a case study in astrology. And again, I don't want to get too into the political part of it, but it is important because you can see in the spirit of revolution, at least, this spirit of shedding and revolting and exploding against these things. I mean, here in America, we have less than almost every liberal democracy. We don't have vacations. We don't have health care. We don't have anything. European democracies live like kings compared to us because of our rigged political system, an electoral college system that's completely rigged, gerrymandered districts, an electoral bodies, these electoral bodies that don't represent the will of the people. We're a liberal people, just like the democracies of Europe, but our representation is incredibly conservative because of things like gerrymandering, of districts, of voting, of all of these other things. The Supreme Court, everything has been shifted so far to the right. It's not even what used to be. It's not even Republican or conservative at this point. It's so far right wing. And America is going to have a revolution at some point, big time, because the majority of the people are just absolutely tired of having it shoved up their rear end. with all this, especially all this conservatism, taking away women's rights, taking away personal rights. Now it's getting worse and worse. And again, for whatever is the excesses of wokeism on the left, there's also oppression on the right. These issues are just reaching a boiling point, and they're going to explode. So again, I start talking about the thing in Ukraine because we really see it, and we have the precedent with Rahu going through Aries the last time to literally show that expansion of NATO, EU, even the Orange Revolution. But we're about to pop in the United States. Those of you who don't live here, I'll tell you, nobody even talks to each other anymore. Everyone is an enemy. It's not just like we disagree. It's like you're an enemy. You need to be destroyed. You see it politically. You see it personally. You see it in every kind of rhetoric possible. For example, and God knows this is what makes it so hard for whatever is going to happen next in this war in Europe or whatever, is now our country has to do something in response. And you're going to get the same kind of divisiveness. We already have like Republicans in this country. More than half the Republicans in this country side with Vladimir Putin. They think Putin is right. Incredible. Why? Because it's an excuse to say that Joe Biden is weak. Because they're so anti the Democrats and Biden that they're side with Putin, a dictator who has invaded another country. They're basically siding with him. So much so that the last vice president, Mike Pence, who was the most feeble and meek there is, came out and chastised Republicans in this country for siding with Vladimir Putin. Who would think this? The Republicans used to be the war hawks, the warmongers. Ronald Reagan is the one who called it the evil empire. Now it's like, well, Putin, well, at least he's not Joe Biden. I'd rather be Russian than Democrat. This is the kind of stuff that, by the way, our last president, Trump, but why is this happening? Because half the country watched our last president on bended knee praising Vladimir Putin for 4 years. This is why. So then Putin does something, they're like, well, Trump liked him, so he must not be that bad. At least he's not a Democrat. So again, this stuff, God knows what it's going to do in America either. So I'm pointing this out because we have some just crazy possibilities coming up with this Rahu going through Aries culturally, especially, again, as I've pointed to, with Mars joining Rahu at the end of the summer in Aries. That's where I think we could really have, I don't know what, it's just really, really dangerous. Again, on a personal level, this is really an update to talk about Ukraine war, Rahu Ketu in that situation, and the shift that's about to happen and the awful possibilities ahead of us. But again, on personal level, Rahu is really trying to align with personal strength and authentic power and willpower through Aries, because Aries is that first sign of the zodiac where we are a powerful individual, and that means our truthful identity and the courage to really introspect and look at yourself in these ways. Look at yourself in this regard. Look at yourself as someone who is a representative of these teachings and how much you're putting them into practice. I'm trying to do my best. We're all trying to do our best. I want to go back because some people did a super chat, and I know people, Alexis, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Moksha Trine did a super chat as well and asked if I do private consultations. I do at times, but you got to be on my email list, and then they go really fast. So, I mean, literally they go within a day or so. So if you see some of my great students that I advocate, that teach with me, you can get readings from them. They'll handle you really well. So, but these are some dangerous times ahead, and what we're all being called to do is be courageous, not just for ourselves, but for others. Try to manage that intensity of Aries energy, which is the warrior. And channel the authentic warrior spirit, which is to be that warrior of light, that warrior of truth. And sometimes that also means an external warrior. It also means not bypassing, because a lot of that stuff also happens these days. It's very easy to just get into a kind of bypassing mode about it. It's easy for me, particularly when I do talk about some of this stuff. Then I get people, attack me, and no, I don't like it. But I'm still going to talk about these things. It'd be easy for me to just bypass it all as well. And this whole idea was, is to be engaged. You see great saints involved in the world, and not bypassing the world, but also involved in the world. And Alexis, if you did have a question with the super chat, you could ask it and I'll read it. But I didn't see a question. So this is very tempting for spiritual people, quote, spiritual people, to not want to show up and face this stuff. But that's part of what we're doing as well. It's painful to see the world this way. It's not fun, but we also have to remember that we're also not this body. We're not this individual. We're a transcendent being, a divine being, and that opportunity to incarnate is a rare gift. It doesn't just come, willy-nilly. Your soul has been wanting to incarnate for a long time so that you could come here to work on your karma. And you have the opportunity to work on your karma, and only the karma that you can work through in this body, in this lifetime. You have to understand, the specific karma that you have with this world, in this body, in this lifetime, is why you're here. It's not your option to say, oh, I'm just above it all. It's not your option. Your option was to incarnate in this world. Again, that doesn't mean you have to fight a war. It means, though, that we all have a connection to the earth as well. That to be in the world but not of the world is also part of our karma. So the question Alexis had, what do you think about NATO's chart having Rahu in Aries and Ketu in Libra? I don't know the chart. I don't have it. So if you say it has that, then what I would think would be that, yeah, that's also obvious. It's another obvious indicator that if, and I believe you, I just don't have every single chart that's ever been developed in front of me. These case studies take a long time. Maybe I'll do a more detailed case study about all of this, but Rahu in Aries and Ketu in Libra with the chart of NATO would again show this same indicator that we're having a whole reset with the whole issue of NATO and the EU. By the way, let me be clear, even when I talk about these things, I'm not advocating for NATO or the EU or any of it. There's no advocacy on my part. I'm actually just looking at these are why these things are happening. And I understand why there's still a NATO when you have a dictatorship in Russia. By the way, who knows? NATO could have disappeared 10 years after the Soviet Union broke up. Soviet Union broke up. I remember it. By the way, I remember it really well. I remember Boris Yeltsin on the tank and Gorbachev dissolving the Soviet Union and giving the nuclear codes to Boris Yeltsin. Because there was a while where people didn't know what was going to happen. Yeltsin was the president of Russia, but the Soviet Union was still in charge. It was 1989. I remember it. And the world was like, what's going to happen with Soviet Union? And what happened is Gorbachev just dissolved it. It's done. Now Russia, now Yeltsin, you have the nuclear codes. And that was it. And by the way, that was the end. By that time, Ukraine had already seceded, quote. These countries had already left. Ukraine's independence was in August of that year. They've been an independent country since then, right? So again, but when we talk about NATO, and it's like, well, why do we even still have NATO? That was just Soviet Union. Well, one of the reasons may be because after Yeltsin was then president for 10 years, and then Putin has been president for 22 years. Maybe because since the end of the Soviet Union, we've had to dictatorships in Russia. Maybe that's why. And Russia keeps trying to take over neighboring countries. Maybe that's why NATO still exists. Just a thought. And again, I'm not saying I want NATO. I don't want war. I don't want dictatorships. I don't want war. I don't want American imperialism. I don't want any of it. Stating things isn't advocacy. It's just saying, yeah, these are complicated issues. So all of this is very tricky stuff. And, unfortunately, that, for people who want to collapse everything into the simplest good, bad, right, wrong, things, are very inconvenient in that way. And I will go out on a limb and say the biggest thing that I see as right, wrong in this situation is you have a dictator attacking a sovereign nation. I can be really clear. I can see the nuances and complexity and all that other stuff. There's no nuance and complexity in this. Okay? There isn't. If it was an actual police action because of neo-Nazis in eastern Ukraine and Russian citizens, okay, then it would be a limited action and it would be that kind of stuff. Okay. What's happened is not that. And if you think it is, probably you're just sympathetic to Putin and everything he says. And again, and you've polarized this to the point to where, everything America has ever done or NATO has done is completely wrong. Putin is saving us from something and therefore is absolved of everything, and that I'm just a brainwashed idiot or some version of that. By the way, there was a lot of this during the Trump years. Say anything about Trump, even just acknowledgement of what he did, like he went to Helsinki and sided with Putin over our own CIA or whatever, and you just say a fact. It's just a fact, even with no judgment to it. And because people are like, everything Trump does is great, and you're not saying it, so you're biased and you're an idiot and you're brainwashed. That's what comes back. So I'm used to it by now. So this is the this is what we have to try to navigate. These are complicated things going on. Someone did have another super chat here. Will Ketu and Libra be people walking away from compromise? That's essentially what it means. And Carlos and others, I would say to get the free web class. I'll put the link there again. Free web class, again, is where I go into great detail with this. So instead of, that's just the basic, that's like interpretation 101. And that's really the general thing. Rahu and Aries were obsessed with our own individuality. That's what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to say, where do I really stand? What am I willing to fight for? In a good way. This is why I'm saying, in a good way, this is what it's going to show up, how it's going to show up for you. What are you willing to fight for? What are you willing to fight for and show up for? That's what Rahu and Aries is. Consequently, Ketu in Libra is going, and for now, I'm not paying attention to what other people want me to do. Other people who want me to like compromise with them and like, oh no, you should really do this, blah, blah. Ketu there is going, that's not really the most important thing right now. Because Rahu and Aries is going, I need to follow what I'm willing to fight for at this point. And other people saying that I should fight for other things is going to be less important. So that's the basic interpretation, as I have in the class, as I have in the free web class, right? You see in the free web class, I explain Rahu and Ketu, the lunar nodes, and then I talk about Rahu and Aries and Ketu and Libra. Then I go into the timelines here. Then I talk about it for each of the 12 signs. And then you can also get a nodes mini course. It's actually only $4.97, not $9.97. So you should get the free web class, Carlos. Moksha Trine said, I do subscribe to your email, so I'll look for your booking info. Okay. By the way, I didn't say I'm doing them anytime soon. So again, the best thing to do if you want a reading is get it from one of my students or someone like that. That's really the best thing. So because I have no plans to be doing readings at this point. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments and people are like Democrats and all this. I'm not affiliated with this. Again, people might think that because we've become so polarized, we don't have any common sense. There's plenty of things Democrats, quote, do. We're not even in that league here in the U.S. One day I might just talk about politics. I don't feel like it, really. I hate both of them. Both of them. We have one party in this country that has lost their mind. They're not even for democracy anymore. It's not even Democrats. It's democracy. Anyway, so these are also things that are just going to be up for grabs now, because we've gone too far at this point, where we have entire segments of the population now and entire media networks and media brainwashing spin that are whitewashing things like a clear insurrection to try to overthrow the legitimate results of an election. Like, okay, now that's on the table. Now even that, well, who knows if the next election anybody's going to believe it. So it's really terrifying things that could be coming, and it's emblematic of how divided people are. And this Rahu in Aries is again, it's the archetype of we're frustrated and ready to fight and maybe blinded by our fury. So we need to be really careful. We need to be really careful about what we think is right and what we're willing to fight for. And aside from that, you as a sovereign being, you as a being who is incarnated in this world and in this lifetime to to incarnate the truth and to know yourself truthfully, that's also the biggest thing that you should really focus on. It's a great time for your meditation, for your yoga, for your inner courage more than anything. And by the way, it is a great time for that. I don't know if you've been doing that, but I have. That I've been feeling a lot of gratitude for the things that I have, and for the fact that I am free, I'm healthy, and the future can be ours in a positive way, because we all have so much more in common than we have in conflict. And I think what's happening now is we're seeing the destruction of these false structures. The destruction. No one wants the world that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump and these ghouls want. And by the way, that includes democratic ghouls as well. Overly sanitized, walking on eggshells, not saying the wrong things or whatever. But we're getting so far away from a world that's inclusive, that's loving, that's kind. And again, the best news is the younger generation is having nothing of it. And so again, it's just this old paradigm that doesn't want to die. It's losing. It's about to lose it all, because late stage capitalism, disconnected from the heart, disconnected from humanism, is in its last gasp. That's what we're seeing. The hope for us all is that it doesn't flush us all down the toilet with it, because you have all these weapons of war and these narcissistic, pathological lunatics in charge. And we need to wake up to what we're doing here, and look beyond spin and manipulation and propaganda, and reconnect to the heart, reconnect to the soul. And that comes from having the courage to also, again, do these practices, share these things, speak the truth with intelligence and kindness. Frankly, I don't always do it. I do my best, but sometimes I get angry too. It's true. I do my best, try to do better. But we're all in it together, and I'm doing my best, and that's all we can do. As we move forward, try to speak the truth and show up with it. And again, the last thing that I will say is to encourage people to get this will really help you to understand, especially based on your rising sign, based on your ascendant, how to handle this, because it's not easy. If you're a Cancer person, this is happening in your 10th house. You're going to be fired up. You're going to be like ready to fight about something. We're all kind of going to be losing our mind in some ways, to where that Rahu is obsessed with something and Ketu is overlooking something else. And again, like the commenter said, we're going to be fanatically obsessed with our own ideas, and I'm right and I'm ready to fight and maybe kill for it. Rahu in Aries. And I don't care what you say, you, this other person, Ketu and Libra, sort of negating that. That's very dangerous, particularly when we are one beat away now from calling each other, you're a traitor, you're a pedophile, you're a this, you're a that. You see our elected officials, everybody's a traitor, everybody's a this, everybody's a that. I just did it myself, calling people pathological narcissists and whatnot, and I should stop. It's hard. Talking about the leaders. And again, so we have, and I'm going to try to stop. It's hard. Sorry. We're angry about this stuff. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you, and I offer that web class as hopefully something that can benefit you. Please share this with others, like and subscribe to the channel and things like that if you think this will really help others as well. So thanks a lot. You have a good day.